It started with a body nobody expected to find. A young woman, wrapped in burlap, lying just beyond the brush along a quiet stretch of Gilgo Beach. Police thought it was a single tragedy, a one-off, a lonely story on a lonely shoreline. They were wrong. Within days, more remains appeared. Then more. Then more. By the time investigators understood what they were dealing with, the pattern was undeniable. Long Island wasn't hiding one victim. It was hiding a graveyard. But that was only the beginning. Gilgo Beach is the kind of place that doesn't ask for attention. Quiet, windy, small houses, scattered rentals, and sand that looks the same for miles. Nothing about it screams danger. Nothing suggests that someone had been using its edges as a dumping ground for nearly a decade. But in 2010, everything changed when a 24-year-old woman named Shannon Gilbert called 911 from inside a gated neighborhood nearby. Her voice was frantic, panicked, terrified of someone she believed was chasing her. For 23 minutes, she stayed on the line. Then she vanished into the marshland and was never seen alive again. Her disappearance sparked a search that went far larger than anyone intended. When officers swept the area looking for her, they didn't find Shannon. Instead, they found someone else, a woman wrapped in burlap, then a second body, then a third, then a fourth, all hidden in almost perfect intervals, all placed with the same cold, methodical precision. Whoever did this knew the land, knew the schedule, knew how to vanish, and more importantly, he had been killing far longer than anyone realized. The bodies found near Gilgo Beach had one thing in common. They weren't random. Each victim was a young woman. Each had been missing for years, and each had last been seen alive working as an escort through online ads, back when meeting strangers from a screen was still a new and dangerous gamble. The media quickly called them the Gilgo Four. Police had another phrase for them, a pattern, the kind of pattern that doesn't happen by accident. But there was something else, something investigators didn't want to say out loud at first. These women had been placed close together, almost too close. Someone wasn't just dumping bodies. He was organizing them, wrapped, hidden, positioned, like he wanted them found eventually, but on his timeline. The more the search expanded, the worse it got. In the cold air, with the wind off the Atlantic cutting across the dunes, officers kept finding more remains. Some victims were placed recently. Others had been there for years, their identities scattered across different stretches of the beach. By the seventh body, the seventh tarp, the seventh nightmare. The question wasn't, is there a serial killer? It was, how many? And why here? Gilgo Beach had become a map, someone's personal burial ground. And the more they uncovered, the more investigators realized something terrifying. This wasn't chaos. This was a system. With pressure rising, police started digging into anyone who lived near the coastline. There was the doctor who lived alone, the fisherman who knew the marsh too well, the reclusive man in the corner house who neighbors swore never left home. The strange calls, the burner phones, the escort ads, the scratched-out email accounts. Everyone looked suspicious. Everyone felt wrong. But when detectives dug deeper, each of these men fell apart as suspects. One had airtight alibis. Another had no connection to any of the victims. Another barely left his house and had medical issues that would have made the killings physically impossible. Piece by piece, the list of suspects collapsed. But the fear didn't, because someone out there, someone methodical, organized, and calm, was still free. And whoever he was skilled, too skilled, the kind of predator who knows how to disappear behind a normal life. This was when the case took a darker turn. Some of the victims' families reported receiving anonymous phone calls after their daughters went missing. Short calls, cold voices, sometimes only breathing. Other times a man speaking calmly, almost mocking them. He never revealed his name. He never stayed on long. He always used public payphones. Never the same one twice. But his tone, that was what stayed with the families. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't angry. He wasn't emotional at all. He sounded like a man discussing something. Routine. One victim's sister remembered his exact words, spoken with a calmness that didn't belong in the conversation. You'll never see her again. Those calls became the spine of the investigation. Because no matter how careful the killer was, those phone calls meant one thing. He couldn't help himself. He wanted to feel the control. He wanted the aftermath. A predator who enjoys the aftermath is far more dangerous than one who simply kills. He wasn't just trying to escape. He was playing. As the bodies stacked up, something strange began happening behind the scenes. Leads went nowhere. Tips were ignored. Evidence got lost. And reports were filed, then quietly unfiled. It didn't make sense. This wasn't some tiny, understaffed department. This was Long Island, one of the most heavily funded police regions in the state. So why did the investigation feel like it was being held together with tape? It took years before the truth started leaking out. The department's highest-ranking officer, the man who should have been leading the charge, was involved in his own crimes. He wasn't incompetent. He was compromised. And when outside investigators tried to step in, he shut them out. The case didn't stall by accident. It stalled because the people in power wanted it to. But while the bureaucracy played its own game, the killer stayed quiet. No new bodies, no new calls, no new clues. Almost like he knew the attention was on him and simply waited it out. Predators don't panic. They adapt. And that was the scariest part. Whoever he was patient, very patient. After more than a decade of confusion, silence, and buried evidence, something finally cracked. It began with a small detail investigators originally overlooked, a vehicle description tied to one of the victim's final sightings. A dark pickup truck. It wasn't enough to identify anyone by itself, but paired with old phone tower data, financial records, and the geography of the dump sites, a pattern pointed back to one single name. Rex Heuermann, an architect, a father, a man with a stable career, the kind of person you'd walk past without thinking twice. He lived in a normal house, on a normal street, with neighbors who used phrases like quiet, polite, and kept to himself. But behind that front was a trail of burner phones, fake email accounts, violent search histories, and movements that aligned almost perfectly with multiple victims' last known locations. When agents finally searched his home, what they found wasn't dramatic. There was no torture room, no trophies hanging on the wall, just a quiet suburban house, with digital fingerprints scattered through the devices inside. Cold, organized, methodical, exactly like the bodies at Gilgo Beach. Rex Heuermann was arrested in 2023, charged with multiple murders. But even with a suspect in custody, the case is far from over. Because there is one question no one can answer. Was he the only one? Some remains didn't match his timeline. Some victims didn't match his method. And some evidence pointed toward the possibility of more than one killer using the same stretch of land. A single burial ground, possibly shared or inherited. And just like that, the coastline of Gilgo Beach becomes something far worse than a crime scene. It becomes a message. Someone out there knew how to hunt, how to hide, how to wait. And even with one man behind bars, the shadows along that beach feel far from empty. Darkframe Stories is where every frame reveals a darker truth. Please like, subscribe, and share to enjoy more of our uncovered truths.